I know we already covered most of this, everyone, and a lot of it hasn't changed since the beta times. But do you really want to watch 4 separate videos that have been spread across 2 weeks of time for all the information you need? No. No, you don't. So then, with everything you can read before you right flipping here, plus a few tidbits sprinkled in that have not been listed for whatever reason, let us just fire through everything we can so we can have it all in one place. And while there's going to be no rhyme or reason to the order of this video, I will try to keep everything in bulk. Say like the food changes, for example. We have multiple crockpot dishes related to eggs, like the plain omelet here, and or the breakfast skillet here, which is also very simple, requiring an egg, a veggie, and any fillers of your choosing. And to continue the conversation, how about some new crockpot dishes that we can make, sure, but we ourselves cannot eat, like steamed twigs, and it's much more involved, Beefalo Treats. But what are they used for, Beard? It's simple, raising a beefalo's hunger very, very quickly. At least in the case of steamed twigs. If you're not riding the beefalo to domesticate it, steamed twigs are absolutely amazing, but if you do want to ride them, they are not a good option. 1, very easy to overfeed them. 2, not efficient on the obedience at all. Beefalo Treats, on the other hand, only increase a guy's hunger by 25, meaning we can feed him a lot more, get obedience up higher, and hopefully just kinda have more efficient all-around food, instead of just trying to raise obedience with twigs and grass that really don't give any hunger whatsoever. They're okay. They're not great, but they are worth a note. But seeing that birch nut recipe reminds me, raw birch nuts can now be fed to beefalo, which doesn't really mean much, but this is huge. Raw birch nuts can now be used in trail mix, making them even better than they already were, and super efficient on the hunger gains. To continue though, tin fishing bins got major buffs in that they now hold 20 fish in total and can be placed on docks, which is definitely a quality of life tweak. Both the insulated pack and the seed pack are no longer burnable, which I actually find to be a pretty big deal, and yes, they both do relate to food, hence why they're in this segment. Our worlds now have the potential to be chock full of new boons related to cooking, farming, and even fishing, where we'll get some free crockpots, fishing rods, recipe cards, gardener hats, you name it. Those recipe cards I just mentioned have a chance to show up in tumbleweeds, graves, sunken chests, and of course the boons, and we'll be listing a random crockpot recipe with a random way to make them, of course. And finally, the big one. Ice cream is now a goodie, meaning Wigfrid can snarf it down. But even though the food-specific talk is over, that doesn't mean we're done talking about food. Folks, say hello to the tall bird segment, starting with the tall scotched eggs recipe, which is absolutely ridiculous, and I cannot believe they didn't nerf it with the official release. That said, with the new tall bird egg laying time being 3 to 5 days, perhaps that is indeed enough of a balance. But let's talk tall birds and how they are now guaranteed to generate in every world we create. However, that doesn't guarantee you good numbers. You might still only get 1 or 2 here and there. But with a tall bird's ability to now create entirely new nests, just as long as nothing is aggroing on them, mind, we can now duplicate tall birds. So if you have the patience to raise them, I don't think the numbers issue is gonna be an issue anymore. But speaking of raising them, the process hasn't changed and it is a long affair. But while you are raising them, you now no longer have to worry about traps. They can no longer set off any of them. However, when it comes to the bramble traps, if they're nearby as they go off, they will still take the damage. And lastly, and somewhat oddly, they have added tall bird eggs to the loot pool of Claus's loot stash, everybody. So, if you need to raise some more, here's an option, I suppose. But I believe it's time for segment 3 of the day, all about turf. Starting with the snazzy Pitchfork, of course. A new tool with 800 flippin' uses. But if we really want to talk all the new turf stuff, we have to bring down the antlion for the Turf Razor Helm, everyone. It is a new boss drop, believe it or not. And yes, it has to deal with digging up all the ground around us. It's simple. Put it on, run around, and whatever turf is underneath you is gonna be dug up without you ever lifting a hand, and you have about 400 uses to choose from. And while that's cool, I am kind of surprised Clay didn't give us an on and off switch with the official release, because if we put turf in it, then we can walk around and actually re-turf what we just unturfed, if you catch my drifts. It's a neat little thing. Definitely mostly for base builders, but hey, a new boss drop cannot go unnoticed. But for the rest of our turf-tastic time, we need to head down to the deep dark ruins, as now we can actually dig up ruins turf and take it anywhere we please. But if we were to bring down just a few pieces of papyrus, we can actually get the blueprints for every single one of these turfs, which is actually pretty darn incredible. 6 different new crafts, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good, my math checks out. And to be honest, they're all pretty darn cheap too. And last, but certainly not least, we have another turf blueprint to get, but this time it is in the ancient archives, and it has to deal with the ancient stonework, which also got a new recipe among these updates recently, and now costs moonstone. And the last major segment of the day, you ask? It's about sleep, everyone. Tents and siesta lean-tos now offer us 15 uses each, up from their original 6, which is absolutely massive. Walter's exclusive camper's tent, which is highly portable and still usable by all other players, will now heal exactly the same as a tent. Even the incredibly basic straw roll here is now going to be regenning health as we use it. And finally, a rather significant change to the fur roll sees it affecting our temperatures. It will keep us warm if we use it. Not bad. Not bad at all. But now comes the part of the video where we literally just fire through all the extra nonsense, as it's mostly random. But a lot of it is not nonsense, like how they completely changed how we build Pearl's home. Every stage is not only going to require 3 separate ingredients, a lot of the ingredients has changed. Like how stage 1 requires fireflies, how stage 2 is going to be asking for cut stone, marble, and now light bulbs, and finally, how stage 3 gets rid of every seasonal requirement ever, and now costs the odd 5 carpeted flooring, 5 rope, and 10 moonstone. It's weird, but it does give us much earlier access to the lunar endgame, I suppose. But speaking of lunar content, we can now use the Lunar Experiment to not only change lobster dens, we can change birds, which might just be one of the biggest changes we have ever flippin' seen. Oh, and by the way, if you're looking for them light bulbs and don't have access to the caves, skittersquids now dropped one guaranteed. If you have any leftover and/or duplicate sketches, adverts, blueprints and even these new recipe cards, you can go to a cartographer's desk, erase them, and get 1 papyrus each. Our lazy foragers are now refuelable by nightmare fuel, so make note there. Our fire pits got a bit of love and can now produce charcoal, but only if they were ever fueled to 100% at any time. But this is actually kind of farmable, which is really odd. And lastly, a random but welcomed buff, Tall Warley. He will now examine what he is about to eat and tell us if he's eaten it recently to help with that 2-day cooldown timer, everyone. I personally don't play him all that much, so maybe it is hard to remember a 2-day cooldown, but hey, like I said, it is a welcomed change, especially since the whole point is to be a quality of life thing. And folks, there you have it. Hopefully a concise and coherent guide on everything new coming following a little drama and the quality of life updates. Do be warned, however, I still didn't cover everything in this video. There are a lot of teensy tiny little things that are definitely neat, but not super duper noteworthy to warrant another revisit. And I'm not just talking about the quality of life list, everyone, as let us remember now, this update brought us a crap ton of setting changes, and even entirely new game modes that can be considered easy mode and hard mode. And there's even a part of this official post that goes into many of the changes and bug fixes that they made since the last hotfix that we covered. In short, there is a heck of a lot here, and even I cannot cover it all, otherwise we'll be here all flippin' day. There's a reason why it was spread across 4 videos, mind. But this is it, folks. The end of the update cycle and the beginning of our Hollow Knights festivities. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.